Come on in, sit back and relax. You're listening to episode 216 of the WealthTech Today podcast. I'm your host, Craig Iskowitz, founder of Ezra Group Consulting. And as you know, this podcast features interviews, news, and analysis around the trends and best practices, all about wealth management technology. My guest for this episode is Bobby Powell, VP of Distribution Sales at iPipeline. Now, Bobby started out in the industry working at Laser App back in 2002. He stayed there for 17 years, working his way up to VP of Sales and Marketing before iPipeline acquired the company in 2019. So basically, he's been at the same company his entire career. We just don't see that much anymore. Congratulations, Bobby. That's commendable to stay there, especially the growth that iPipeline is having in the past 5 years, and of course the growth Laser App had in their time as an independent company was quite impressive. Some of the things we covered in this interview, a lot of different topics, mainly around annuities and technology to support that. So with the rapid growth of annuity sales, we talked about advisors' technology needs. We talked about a chassis platform and more broker-dealers and RIAs selecting software to act as a chassis that they can build the rest of their tech stack on top of. And then trends in e-signature. Now, but before we get started with the episode, let's talk about your tech stack. Ezra Group, we've seen hundreds of tech stacks at RIAs, and let me tell you, most of them are loaded down with tech debt. So you shouldn't feel too bad about yours. Let's face it, tech debt is like a giant anchor holding back your business's growth. So if you want to free your firm beyond tech debt, getting free from that so you can really get your firm to the next level, you should run and not walk to our website, EzraGroup.com, and fill out the Contact Us form on the homepage. Our experienced team can evaluate your current tech ecosystem, deliver targeted recommendations, optimize your existing systems and operations, or run an RFP and help you implement new software to get your firm to the next level. Come and take advantage of our free consultation offer by going to EzraGroup.com. Now, a couple of housekeeping items. Please subscribe to this podcast wherever you listen to podcasts so you don't miss an episode. Go to the Invest in Others charitable foundation. Check them out at investinothers.org. They do a lot of great work for charities that advisors are involved in. If you know a financial advisor that's very involved in a local, national, or international charity, go to investinothers.org and let them know about this person, and they may be able to get some additional funds for their charity. All right, now let's kick this thing off. I'm stoked to introduce my next guest. It is Bobby Powell, VP Distribution Sales at iPipeline. Bobby, welcome, man. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Craig. Good morning.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Where are you calling from?
Southern California. So I'm usually the good morning guy on the call.
Yeah, it is still morning, that's right.
Yeah.
And I'm in New Jersey, and we're actually having some nice weather, although you probably wouldn't think so because it's in the low 50s, but
Sounds good. That's not too different from us. I think we're going to get, I think we got 4 more days of rain that are coming this week. So,
well, that's not a bad thing for where you are.
yeah.
Excellent. All right, let's jump right in. Can you give us a 30-second elevator pitch for iPipeline?
Sure. So iPipeline is really the platform on which you can process life insurance and wealth management kind of really end to end. So we're the one spot where if you're a broker-dealer or wealth management firm or a BGA, you can process life, annuities, securities of all types, checking app, brokerage, advisory business, all in one shop. So that's kind of our real end to end.
And that is incredibly useful. It's very difficult to do those things. And more large broker-dealers, enterprise wealth firms rely on technology like iPipeline to really get their business started. Right? That's the first point of contact that every client has with their wealth management firm is the onboarding.
Typically, yeah. I mean, that advisor experience too, but that client experience really is kind of your normal kickoff point, right? It's your first face with the that maybe the broker dealer, the organization has with that end customer, is oftentimes the tech.
It's usually that. That's
Yep.
very, very usually the first thing they look at, and that's the time you want to make a good first impressions.
Yep.
And what's surprising to me, we've been at Ezra Group, we've been in we of course in the wealth management for almost 19 years, but the digital account opening started to become a trend around 2015, 2016. But there's still some enterprise wealth management firms that haven't switched to digital account opening solutions. And for the life of me, I can't imagine why they're dragging their feet. And do they even realize what benefits they're missing out on?
Well, I'd say that's not simple, right? I mean, that's a pretty complex thing when you think about wealth management firms and how similar but how different so many wealth management firms are. They have you're trying to digitize business in all of your channels. It's not as simple as, hey, we process advisory business and we custody with Schwab or Fidelity, so we're just going to automate that. You've got to automate everything, right? So you've got a lot of different business channels. You may do brokerage, advisory, checking out business, all these other business lines or business channels that need to be kind of automated, and hopefully in a sense that is kind of congruent or simple or straightforward for both advisors and clients to interact with. So I think for a lot of these firms, it's not a real simple decision, right? It's something it is something you have to be dedicated to as a firm. You really got to decide, this is what we're going to do. This is what we're going to jump into, because it's firms have to have a lot of kind of introspective as they get into the process, because they have to look at what they do well and what they don't do well today, and if they're going to change those processes or keep them. So there's a lot of decisions, I think, in the middle there to make it that maybe muddy the waters for some of these firms a little bit.
Indeed. Um, Total U.S. annuity sales. Let's talk about that. They surged last year to over $300 billion, a 23% increase from the previous year.
Mhm.
But annuities are still complex and underutilized, especially in the wealth management space. But more and more firms are offering annuities, either by acquisition, acquiring insurance companies, or launching their own products. So how can they, what recommendations do you have that they can simplify the overall experience for advisors offering annuities and for clients in purchasing them?
Sure. I would say, for starters, I think annuities have actually, in our space, have grown probably considerably more than that. Just looking at our own customer figures, we have customers that have grown well over 100% in the last 2 years in their annuity volume, their annuity transaction volume. So with the change in interest rates, annuities have exploded. I would say that a lot of firms haven't necessarily been prepared for that explosion, as you could probably imagine, right? Usually tech is the first, the tip of the spear is usually the tech provider, and then everybody else kind of follows. As tech provider who's kind of lived in the annuity space a long time, we've solved a lot of annuity problems for customers. Like you said before, annuities they're inherently super complex, right? You have different regulations. Some, they can be securities and annuities, securities and insurance products both. They can be regulated differently. You have lots of different types, lots of different training requirements around them. You have advisors trying to handle annuities. You have broker dealers trying to handle annuities. So you have all annuities are there's a whole lot going on just in the annuity space in general. A lot of things that have to be addressed in order for you to properly support annuities. I would say where that really starts it is with kind of with what's out there already. That a lot of the legwork in the space has already been done, and most people don't really realize that. So the carriers for probably, I'm going to say, at least 10 years, the carriers have all of the annuity carriers have standardized how annuities are processed, how they not only create rules, define rules, but how they make them available to all the broker dealers and all the distributors out there. So there's already kind of a whole standard set on how annuities should operate. The trick is kind of taking all of those rules, taking everything that already exists, and doing what we call democratizing the annuity process, and just make it really simple for that end user. I liken it to kind of like TurboTax, right? It's like you need that simplified approach to annuities, that wizard-based approach, as opposed to being handed a stack of annuity forms and trying to figure out, okay, well, is this everything I need? What am I missing? You probably wouldn't be surprised at what advisors try to create when they're handed a stack of annuity forms. They effectively invent their own annuities trying to process an annuity application. So it can become pretty tricky. So it's one of those things where relying on what's already been done, kind of standing on the shoulders of giants, really goes a long way in the annuity space.
Yeah, I like the TurboTax analogy. Everyone understands that, and everyone's used to that. And you really want a wizard to walk you through, because not every advisor understands annuities in the same way. So making it easier for them to do this can only be a good thing.
I think too, they look at it in the context of securities. So when I process securities business, securities are relatively simple, at least in terms of execution. Maybe planning is more complex, but the actual execution has been relatively simplified, standardized, et cetera. Annuities, it is far more complex. So if I put myself in the advisor's shoes and think about, okay, this is how I process my check and app business or my advisory business or my brokerage business. So this is how I think annuities are going to work. It's probably not going to work that way. In fact, I know it doesn't work that way. There are a lot more layers to it. So it's really kind of understanding what, the delta between the two.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and how does that work?
Yep.
And understanding the delta and quantifying it and being able to deliver on that is something a lot of firms have tried but have not been able to deliver on.
Yep.
At least what we found.
Yep.
In 2017, which is already over 5 years, iPipeline acquired Laser App, one of the largest providers of form filling, workflow software for advisors. So what are some of the trends you're seeing around these kind of tools? And what are the problems that broker-dealers, enterprise wealth management firms are having around this area?
Good question. And yeah, time has flown. And I Laser App is a special place in my heart because I started there in 2002. So that was really getting my feet wet in the wealth space with IBDs, RAs, registered reps, clearing firms, custodians, et cetera.
So you just passed your 20-year anniversary.
I did, yeah, last year, yeah.
Congratulations.
All in wealth tech, surprisingly. So very, very, I've like I always say, I was born in wealth tech, and I will die in wealth tech someday. I found my swim lane. So,
yeah.
But yeah, in ways, BDs, broker dealers, and advisors, their problems have their needs have evolved somewhat, and then haven't really evolved kind of at the same time. So the things that they have, that the problems that are out there still exist in large part today. The solution providers, the solution sets, the way we solve them have changed somewhat, but just kind of thinking back to how I started right after the dot-com bubble, right? So you had, the market was down, firms were not buying technology, advisors were buying their own tech, and in 2000, and was it 2000, the market picked up. Then in 2008, it kind of, with the housing bubble, things, broker dealer spending and tech spending and the way technology was used and adopted kind of wavered off again, and then picked back up and kind of stair step back up. So the kind of what's been put into this space is really kind of, I would say, ebbs and flows over time, and the waxing and waning of firms kind of ebbs and flows over time. But the needs don't really necessarily change a whole lot. So when you think about how broker dealers are solving problems today, how they're processing business today, how they're supporting the different business channels, those business channels haven't really changed. The options really haven't changed. How assets get allocated within those different options may change. So it used to be a lot of check and app business. Now there's a lot more brokerage and advisory business, and as of late, there's a lot more annuity business. But the business channels that the broker dealers are trying to support really haven't changed a whole lot. Regulation hasn't changed, or the regulatory landscape, I would say, hasn't changed a whole lot too. Everybody's, 5 years ago it was DOL, and what is old is new again. DOL is new again. So again, you're still solving the same regulatory challenges and so forth, but again, things haven't kind of really changed a whole lot in that regard. Now, tech advancements have definitely grown. You've got a lot more tech out there. It's interesting because the same way the industry kind of ebbs and flows or expands and contracts, I feel like tech expands and contracts.
Mhm.
Right? You had a lot of point solutions back in the day. They kind of
Mhm.
consolidated into platforms, and you have big TAMPs like the InvestNets and Orions of the world, and iPipelines of the world, where you have a lot of you perform a lot of functions, but then now you also see the regrowth or reinnovation of new small point solutions kind of growing and spinning back up again as well. So it's this constant, again, ebb and flow of tech in the space, and that kind of grows and moves with the space. So
Yeah, we're certainly seeing that the way things are changing, and the way the tech is evolving. Yeah, and I get asked this question a lot. I was just at the Tiburon conference and on a panel, and someone asked, which do you recommend, build or buy? Do you recommend all-in-one solutions or point solutions, best of breed? And the answer is, it depends. There's no right answer to those questions because every firm is different. Every firm has different deliverables or different differentiators and different client bases, different products. They've started out with different tech. They're in different stages of their growth cycle. So even if you bought, well, all things be equal, we recommend to buy an all-in-one, because the biggest problem we see with firms is integration and data. And the more point solutions you try to integrate, the harder it's going to be, the more it's going to cost you, the more tech people you need. So for most firms, they don't have that capability in-house. So the all-in-one's best of breed. The all-in-ones, buying them or renting them is usually the best solution. But once you grow a bit, and if you feel you've got a good tech team and you're willing to grow your tech team and invest in the technology, then best of breed is now on the table. And there's more and more point solutions. If you look at the Keatsis Ezra Group map that Michael and I work on, there's over 440 applications there now, and they're growing by between 6 and 12 every month. So it's really a smorgasbord for advisors. Never been a better time to be an advisor if you like using technology.
I always like, speaking of the Keatsis map, I always like the highlighted, all the ones that are highlighted. I don't know if it's pink or whatever color it is, but that shows you all the new innovative, like the newer entrants into the market. I always like seeing what's new there, because I feel like that to me is always like a kind of like your KPI or your indicator of there's growth. So something happening in an area when you have that influx of new providers, that's always exciting to see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I would say too, you're talking about kind of build versus buy. One of the things we talk about a lot internally, before I joined iPipeline, I'd never really worked much with wirehouses. We'd always worked heavily in the independent space.
Yep.
And that wirehouse model is very, it almost comes across as ultra simplified when you look at it in terms of a tech stack perspective. You look at things work one way. They work really well. They are hyper optimized, but it's because it's a simpler way to do it, because you don't have to account for all of the different, everybody being different with all different kind of needs and requirements, et cetera. So when you're talking about buying versus building, IBDs and RIAs have although they have similar needs, they have there are also there's a vast list of differences too that can kind of lead them down the buy versus build path. So things aren't so cut and dried, and that's always been feel like it's always been kind of one of the core challenges of IBDs, as long as I've been in this space, is really trying to figure out how much they can handle, how much independence they can handle or support, and on really supporting kind of the costs associated with it. Because being independent, it has costs associated with it. Supporting all of these various systems, and at the same time trying to rationalize or wrangle everything into something that you can monitor, keep your hands on, keep a handle on, et cetera. So
yeah, it's an ongoing process. And we've seen a lot of firms struggle for example, if they sell very well in the RIA space, and then they want to move into the IBD space, or from RIAs to enterprise, any enterprise wealth management firm. It's not easy. It's something we specialize in, helping wealth tech firms do that, because it is difficult to know what functionality you need with the enterprise firms, what their sales cycles are like, what their buying decisions are like. It's a very different. So as of course you know that those spaces are very different.
Yep.
The when it comes to looking at the Laser app in general, have you seen the way firms are using it change over time?
Yeah, I would. And maybe I could put this in a bit of a broader brushstroke too. As a broker dealer or an RIA firm, one of the first things you got to kind of figure out is, what does my chassis look like?
Mm.
What is my start point, and then everything else builds on top of it. And when I look at Laser app versus some of our other offerings or other solutions, when I really look at kind of that down market wealth space, Laser app is oftentimes the chassis. That's either the IBD or the RIA says, okay, this is kind of the chassis on which I run my business. Firms will usually get to a certain point where they say, you know what, I need a full-blown account opening system where I'm onboarding clients, and I'm moving money and doing other things, and I need a fully wizard-based, fully integrated approach. So they will, I don't want to say level up, but they will kind of change their needs are typically broader,
Mhm.
and so then they will kind of migrate to that level. So I will say that how Laser app is used today probably hasn't changed a whole lot in that regard. It has not changed in terms of how it integrates to all the different CRMs and all the data sources, and being a solution that integrates basically with everything that it to support the independent space. Where I will say is that we've spent a lot of time and effort and energy plugging into the different custodians, being able to work directly with them to kind of support the down market as it changes over time. So if you think about these different lines of business or channels of business that get processed by broker dealers or by RIAs, you have to look at what the simplest way is for them to process their business. Is it a wizard? Is it digital forms?
Mhm.
Or something in between, a hybrid of, some type of a hybrid approach. But I will say that kind of looking at Laser app kind of more as a chassis has been kind of one of the biggest changes I've seen over time, is thinking about it kind of more in that regard, as opposed to kind of a point tool or point solution.
Yeah, I would agree, and that's comes with the landscape of being a successful application and building out more functionality
Mhm.
as you go over time, where you move just so we're just a form filling app to now we're a full workflow solution that, as you said, you can build your applications around, and that's something we also get asked a lot: is what is going to be the hub? If you're an RIA, what should be your hub? And there's no right answer to that. It's the portfolio management platform. If they're really portfolio management focused, where investing, you're choosing investments and building models is their core deliverable, core differentiator, then that their investment analytics or their portfolio management become their core platform. If they're more financial planning focused, then their financial planning application becomes their core platform. But if they're more sales and growth focused, then the CRM would be more.
Mhm.
So are you seeing that, or what are you seeing when it comes to using Laser app as a chassis? What type of applications are they plugging into?
So I would say it kind of depends too on the size of the firm. To me, that's one of the big markers. So, you talked about kind of the profile of the firm, or where their focus is, but it's also where they're at in kind of their growth trajectory, right? So if I'm a small RIA firm, I may rely very heavily on my custodian to deliver most of my tools to me, just because I'm not ready to take on these different pieces yet. Maybe my processes are not mature enough yet, or whatever else. But typically, as smaller firms that are maybe still simpler in the business that they process, they may rely more heavily on their custodian to provide just whatever their custodian is going to give to them, or kind of subsidize for them.
Mm.
I think, again, as that firm grows and their needs are kind of more complex, that's when we see them kind of settle in and say, okay, am I going to focus on integrations with other parties, or am I even going to take the next step up where I really become the kind of the developer or the creator of my own ecosystem, right? am I going to be concerned with that overall kind of end-to-end experience for the client, or am I still just focused internally just on gaining efficiencies and making things, opening accounts very quickly, easily, simply, or am I looking to get this all the way out in front of the client and take it to a whole other level? So that's kind of how we usually kind of look at them is the size of the firm. Also, like you said, the nature of their business. I think the long and the short of it is we connect to a myriad of different solutions out there, right? CRM is usually kind of your first spot to go, because when you're opening accounts, there's a lot of information that's typically in the CRM that you can leverage to open accounts. But then there are other kind of adjacent pieces as well that you may need to incorporate into the process. So again, what usually when a customer kind of migrates from, let's say, Laser app and then jumps up to, like I said, like our IFS platform or our account opening platform, when you get up to that level, that's usually when you incorporate even more kind of downstream integrating parties, workflows, et cetera. So just again, depends on how big the client is and kind of where they're at in their own client or their own advisor journey.
Man, we know that for a fact. Yeah, it's every firm is in a different state. Every firm is in a different growth pattern. So how they use their technology is very different. Do you want to talk about e-signature a little bit? I mean, I know that I believe the Laser app has built their own e-signature solution. Why did they do that, and how? What are the benefits from having that in this technology chassis?
Sure. If you'll humor me and let me tell you a real quick story though about e-signature. So back, it had to be maybe 2007, 2008. Met with American funds, and this is when we were trying to gain e-sign acceptance in the space, and nobody was really firms just weren't accepting e-signatures. BDs wanted it, nobody was accepting it, or very few firms were accepting it. Met with those guys, and they said, "Hey, what do we have to do to get you guys to e-sign enable your forms?" And they said, "We need to see customer demand." And it kind of planted a seed in me that we've got to go do something about this. So at the time, we were hosting our annual broker-dealer conference. So we created the first e-sign petition. We had 150 broker-dealer executives sign the e-sign petition. And then we took it back to Cap Group or American Funds, as well as all the other fund companies, annuity providers, et cetera, to show them that, to illustrate that demand to get e-signatures accepted in the space. Now, granted, it took a number of years after that to get the majority of firms e-signable, but I would say the majority of firms today do accept e-signatures. Maybe to your point, though, although e-signatures are accepted, there's still there's still some lack of clarity, I think, when it comes to being a BD or an RIA. Like, who in my downstream accepts e-signatures? What's the best one to use? What signing methods are approved? Am I doing SMS? Am I doing KBA or knowledge-based authentication? Am I doing a blend of both? Which e-sign providers do I use? So there's a whole lot of variables, a whole lot of things to understand with that. I would say at its simplest form, looking at the lines of business you process today, whether you're a BD or an RIA, in kind of simply put, at Laser app, every firm that has their forms on the platform either elects to support e-signatures or not, and they have to do it agnostically. They can't say yes to DocuSign, no to SignX, yes to Adobe Sign, whatever. They have to do it across the board. So that's something that we've done a good job of saying, of really kind of towing the line on. So once firms approve it, they approve it for everybody. So that way, you as the consumer, the BD or the RIA, can say, okay, I approve e-signatures, and then you will inherit the e-sign, kind of like the e-sign privileges for all of those firms that have their forms on the platform today. So again, whether they're clearing firms, custodians, et cetera. So you will inherit all that. You'll be able to e-sign whatever forms you would like in the library that are approved for e-signature.
It is impressive. And there's also an issue with a lot of custodians that have their own version of DocuSign, and it took a while. It's getting better, but there's still some issues when it comes to some of the bigger custodians forcing their wealth management firm clients to use their version of DocuSign. Now, there's some exceptions, and they'll allow you to request approval to use your own DocuSign, but a bit of a pain in the ass, if you ask me.
100% agreed. And there are some specific ways to address it. That's our support team has, I think, been inadvertently doing e-sign support for, maybe not inadvertently, but they've been doing e-sign support for a lot of years around the various e-sign providers to help bring clarity to advisors, because it is really unclear. If you are dual custody or multi-custody, the way each of your custodians handles e-signatures is I guarantee you it's absolutely different between them. One of the things that we've done to help mitigate or address that is we've structured the system such that not only can you have a different e-sign method, you can also even have a different e-sign vendor per custodian, because they are so drastically different. So think about it like, if I'm a broker dealer and today I work with 2 different custodians and I do checking app business and all other lines of business, I may settle on my e-sign solution, my preferred e-sign solution, and I can mandate that across my rep base. But when they process business at custodian number one doesn't accept that e-sign provider. So we can allow them to use the different e-sign provider when they work with custodian number one. The custodian number 2 may accept it. They may accept our e-sign provider, but they may require a different type of authentication. So they may require KBA when I'm SMS. So we allow for that as well. So again, it's that line from being very extensible, but also trying to keep things simple at the same time. So that I think we've struck a pretty good balance there in something that is inherently probably more complex than it really needs to be. You know, e-signatures are supposed to be simple. They've been approved since 2001, I think, or 1999. That's something like, longer than I've been in the space. They e-signatures have been accepted. So.
Well, we've both been in this space quite some time, Bobby, but speaking of time, we've run out for this episode. Can you please tell the audience where they can find more information about iPipeline?
Sure. We've got a brand new website, ipipeline.com. Very intuitive, very simple, very straightforward, which hopefully resonates with all of our products as well. So love for you guys to come check it out.
Bobby, thanks so much for being here, man. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Craig.
Hey, it's Craig again. My top 3 takeaways from this episode, actually top 4 takeaways. We're going to give you a bonus. Number 1, annuity sales have exploded in recent years due to changes in interest rates. Firms need to prepare their technology to support this growth. Number 2, while advisor needs haven't changed much over time, technology solutions have evolved from point solutions to platforms and then back again to point solutions. We've seen both directions, firms going from one way to the other and one back and forth, and also lots of new point solutions launching in areas we didn't even know existed before. Number 3, Laser App is often used as a chassis that broker-dealers and RIAs can build the rest of the tech stack on top of. And our bonus, number 4 takeaway is e-signature is a widely accepted technology, but there's still some lack of clarity around the best practices and usage of it. And Laser App supports e-signatures agnostically across many providers. All right, that's all. You've reached the end of another episode of the WealthTech Today podcast. Please go to our website, scroll to the bottom of the homepage, and sign up for our newsletter. Once a month, you'll receive an email chock full of wealth management goodness, news, updates, information. You will not be disappointed. Thanks again for listening, and talk to you all again next time.